that will have a ripple effect. And I start with that, and then I proceed to look for other models that can help me. I chose this subject, this title, Preparedness, because that is exactly how I felt when this whole COVID started. We are actually facing a systemic pause. Our routines, our habits are on pause. They've been interrupted. And this is an opportunity to influence people to create a new normal rather than rush back to the old normal. And to be able to do that in a systematic way, it's important that we have a strategy so that it's done with grace, with style, and we can actually achieve what we set out to achieve. I thought I would, as a coach, I don't see myself only as a coach. I'm a coach, I'm a mentor, I'm a teacher, I'm a role modeler, whatever you want to call me. But I have looked over the years at different things that have happened. I remember vividly the financial crisis and how I came to the realization that the bubble was about to burst. And this allowed me to recognize that there are certain skills and capabilities that we have to strengthen, we have to make stronger, we have to really deepen so that we can improve as coaches. One of the most important things to me is when I am working with a person, I recognize that before I can work with the person, I have to be able to go there first. So we talk about leadership. We are all leaders in our own sphere. So it's important that I am able to do what I'm asking my clients to do. I should be, if I'm talking about state management, I should be able to do that myself. If I'm talking about strategy, there are things I should be able to do as well. So I'm going to share with you a model. Why is this not working? Okay. One of the, you obviously know that I'm an NLP practitioner. Of course, I've done all the training. So I'll be using Robert Dilt's work, which talks about the workshop of leadership. And this is a lens through which I look at myself and I look at my clients. The very first part is the leader. So if I think of myself as a leader, what is it about me, myself, and I that I have to take care of? I've got to be able to lead myself. The same thing if I'm working with a client, I talk about my client being able to lead himself before he can lead others. You cannot lead yourself. Was there a noise there? If I cannot lead myself, it will be difficult to lead others because the various stages, the various steps in leading self apply to the other people you'll be working with. And when I say others, that will be like all your stakeholders, people you're working with, if you're an organization, your boss, your colleague, your reports, people in different departments would be others. So anybody that is in that space of influence that would be a what do you call them? A stakeholder. The same thing, you have to talk about goals. I can't see my screen very well. Maybe I should close this. Yes, goals, outcomes. We set goals for ourselves and we set goals for others. So understand the GROW model is very good for this. It shows us how to set goals. And anyone who's an NLP person or who's interested in NLP, we'll be talking about outcome thinking, goals that are well formed. Again, the way I look through this lens of the workspace, I think of the system where the leader works. So it would be, for instance, myself, it would be my coaching space, whether it's local, whether it's international, International could be West African, African, Western. We look at the system. And all of these things tying as the workspace of the leader. This is how I look at myself, and this is how I look at my clients. And it forms like the lens through which I look at myself and anybody who's working with me, any stakeholder. Sorry, I'm looking for the next thing. Wow. Now we're looking at the skills that are involved, competencies. Leadership, self-leadership skills are things that many of us have embarked upon, competencies. All those ICF core competencies, when they talk about understanding your own purpose, understanding your vision, your mission, your capabilities, your actions, your reactions. I think Ade dealt with some of those things in his own presentation. So you have self-leadership skills and you have system thinking skills. I'm coming to present one of the models I use for simple system thinking skills. And there we have the competence that is involved is the ability to anticipate. And I'm not going to go into it too deeply because there are many competencies within that competence, the ability to anticipate. It's just being aware of the system which you serve. And if today we're sitting in a position where we really don't know what's going to happen. Many of us should be anticipating as best as we can on what the system is going to present to us, what we're going to have to do, and come up with certain goals. Now, even though we really don't know, it's still better to be prepared. So, sorry, there's certain things that will present themselves that can help us to prepare for the system. So we talk about system thinking skills. We talk about self-leadership skills. Again, I presented that already, and that's the ability to understand self, what your vision is, and all of that, versus relational skills, being empathetic, and all of the things that I think Ade and Habiba have talked about in their sessions. And there it's the ability to align with others, anybody who's in your strategic network. Now, some of the competencies we need to have, or some of the things we need to begin to look into would be our strategic network. Many of us talk about our network, but when I'm talking specifically about our strategic network. And then with that in mind, the system in mind, that's the ecology which we serve, the network, the strategic network, we can therefore take action, come up with goals and strategies for this to be able to happen. So this is actually how I look at my client. A client comes in and I look at, as he's speaking, as he's talking, this is the framework from which I look at him. Now I'm going to go further very quickly. Now we're talking about COVID. We've all been, it's like a surprise in the system. And there are many, many people who have done what economists call the knee-jerk reaction. Now I had to go check, what is a knee-jerk reaction? What is a knee-jerk reaction? So something happens, we're not expecting it, and many of us start to move without thinking. So we sign up for many webinars, we do this, we do that, instead of pausing before we take action. Now, it's easier said than done. Something presents itself like COVID. I mean, what do you expect that we do? Of course, we rush out and we buy stuff. In fact, we overbuy. Some of the stuff in my fridge is rotting at the moment because we didn't really sit to plan. But it's time for us maybe to use this opportunity to find balance in our lives. As fast as we rushed up and down, doing all the stuff, trying to make sure we would survive in the few days or the weeks that we thought we would be held up, it's important for us to come back to some kind of balance, find a balance, so that we don't keep just running off and doing more and more and more knee-jerk reactions. I'm going to use what I generally use with my clients. I've just come back to what I generally use with my clients. And this is what Habiba presented last week, the wheel of life. Now, when I use this with a client, depending on what they come in with, I don't always use the wheel. It just depends on what level the client is. But I visit all of these areas and these fairs. And the wheel of what life is not something, the way it is presented to you is not set in stone. I believe in customizing anybody who comes in, I customize the wheel of life for them. So I may include things like, I'm going back here, there's nothing talking about spirituality here, but I may put it in. I may separate friends and family. And I may further demarcate some of the things that are here. But the wheel of life allows us to see the person in the various aspects of their lives. And I generally use it. I don't use the circle as it is, but I question my clients from this concept. And how do I do it? I start by, the client comes in with a problem, or I come in with my own problem to myself, and I look at the dimension that needs to be talked about. I believe in numbers, because without numbers, it's just airy-fairy and in the air. So I generally ask for a client or myself to say, look, let's scale this thing. Look at each dimension and write down the amount of satisfaction you have in that area. And then the question is, why is it so? I don't stop at the universal cycle of change. I move on to another model, which I'm going to present later. But I use the universal, I use the wheel of life in different ways. I can sometimes elicit from the client his present state, what is happening in his present life, his present situation, and the question is why. Depending on what he presents, I may go to the past and we'll say, okay, let's go back, or even months, let's just go back a few months. What was happening in your life? And we discuss why. Again, we may compare the two wheels. We take notes, he takes notes, she takes notes. And then we discuss the future. Again, remember, all our coaching is about goals and outcomes. What our clients want to have that will make them feel that they are achieving or they're successful. So we talk about the future. We may say it's months, it's years, and we look at, again, the ideal level of satisfaction for the dimension that they are concerned with. I'm running through it because I think many of us already use these tools. So I'm not going to go too deep into that, but these are the two tools I use as a sort of first step in with my client before I then go deeper and further by asking questions the usual coach style way. Now I'm going to move to the universal cycle of change and how I use the universal cycle of change alongside the wheel of life. The universal cycle of change was created by Tim and what's his wife's name? Tim Holbaum, and they run the NLP University. And they presented this years ago, and I came across this in, I think, the year 2000, and I always use this to analyze a client, to look at where they are, and to know how to help them move to the next level. They look at creation and say that for over 30 billion years, the universe has presented this type of cycle. And they present it in a model that's very, very simple. There are 7 stages of this universal cycle. So imagine I have already done some kind of assessment of my client, looking at his space. I'm going back again. I'm just reminding you of what we've done. Looking at his leadership space in terms of himself, his alignment with others, the way he looks at his market and his strategies to enable him be successful in his organization and with his team. That's the first thing. Then I look at him with regards to what it is that he wants to improve, what dimension of his life that he wants to improve. And then I use this frame, I will call it this lens, through which the client or myself can look at the dimensions that we've decided to look at, and look at it and look at where on the cycle we are. This allows us to sort of crop and come closer to where we have challenges. And I'm going to take us further. Let me present the universal cycle of change. The first level or first stage is the stage of creation. This is where it's all about new beginnings, an idea. A business, when a business is formed, it's an idea first, it's a thought, and then we plant the seed. Even our relationships, whether it's a love relationship, a friend relationship, a business relationship, there's a thought that comes, and then the seed is planted. So it's some kind of starting point. A tree doesn't become a tree, it's a seed first, it's planted. And therefore, everything has a beginning, it's created, it's a creation. The next stage is the stage of growth. And this is where the system begins to grow, develop. So for instance, a relationship when it's fresh, you know how it is. It's not self-sustaining. You have to put in a lot of effort to make it work. A business that starts, many times we have to, you the protagonist of the business has to do a lot more than just be the founder or the creator. Sometimes we're our own finance manager, sometimes we're our own HR manager, sometimes we're our own messenger, because it's still growing. It's growing, it's developing. It's not self-sustaining. Even a child that is born in its very first months, it can't feed itself, it can't look after, it can't clean itself, and therefore it's not self-sustaining. Therefore, we have to help it in that regard. So that is growth. The next stage is the stage of complexity to maturity. And this is where the system begins to take shape. It becomes more self-sustaining, is what we call a steady state. And, but it's growing. This is where in a business, because you have more clients, you hire an HR manager because you have too many employees. You hire an accountant because it's no longer just basic payroll. And so it becomes more complex as it goes along. But the most important thing to recognize in a cycle is that turbulence will come. And it comes at different times for different people. And turbulence is where the system gets complex. It grows, problems begin to come, regulators bring in new regulations, all types of things start to happen in the system. But this is a natural occurrence in life. Remember the title is called Universal Cycle of Change. And I don't think if you really went and investigated that you don't know that you will find any system that doesn't go through some kind of turbulence. So turbulence is part of nature. And in turbulence, certain things have to happen so that you don't move into full-blown chaos. Now, if you look at Nigeria where we're at, we've been in turbulence for a long time. I would wonder what most of you would say if I asked you, are we in turbulence, are we in chaos? Is the world in turbulence or is it in chaos? Is your coaching profession, your own personal coaching career, where are you in the cycle of change? Your relationship, where are you in the universal cycle of change? But in turbulence and chaos, turbulence always comes into the system. And we don't always have to move into full-blown chaos if we do simple things like drop off. So dropping off is letting go of what is no longer serving you. And if you look at the many webinars, the many emails, the information you're getting from the system out there, you will notice that many people are talking about it's time to renew, it's time to reflect, it's time for something. It's all about something, because it's time to drop some things that is necessary for your system. And let me list for you some of the things that sometimes need to be dropped off. Sometimes we need to drop off a behavior. Sometimes we need to drop off an attitude. Where is it here? I can't find it. Sometimes we need to drop off a relationship. Sometimes we need to drop off a job. There's certain things in our system that require that we drop off, release, let go, so that we can become more balanced. And the best way they found to do this is by going into what they call meditation and dormancy. When you're quiet, when there isn't a frenzy and a lot of noise, when you can go in and be insightful, you will find that which you must drop off. It's not your coach telling you what to drop off. It's not your brother. They may help you, but you will know from your insights, from your intuition, what it is you need to drop off. And I must tell you that this has always worked for me. When I help my clients with this always works. There's always something to drop off that they have refused to drop off. And I tell you, there's no tree in the world that wakes up and says, I refuse to drop my leaves when it's time to drop them off. There's a time in the season when trees must drop their leaves so that they can go back and bring out new leaves. The animals, like snakes, molt. They drop off their skin so that they can bring forth new skin and rejuvenate. It's human beings that refuse to drop off. We're resistant to change. And therefore, we have a lot of problems and we sit in chaos. Now, chaos is not necessarily bad. It's just that there's a need to take the learnings and do something, shift something in our system. So meditation and dormancy is that period where many of us are in that state right now. And I'm going to take us back to the leadership space. This is where we can take a good look at ourselves. What is it about me? How am I coaching? This is what I do all the time. I don't wait for periods like this. It's something I do constantly, which I'm sharing with you. Constantly checking against my capabilities, my beliefs, my values. What are my values today? And it's as if to say I've sort of stuck on some values, but I add others from time to time. And depending on my ecology, the values are taken in, brought in, and some are taken out. But so you look at yourself, yourself and I. If you can't do that with yourself or for yourself, you can't do it for your client. I look at the market I serve, which I'm doing now, and I'm looking at all my stakeholders. I'm looking at them in terms of the goals I'm going to set. I'm looking at I'm going to go back a bit again to myself, and I'm saying, what do I need to drop off? There are many clients I need to drop. And I've come to that realization that they have to go as much as I love them. And it's for me to build rapport and explain what has happened and why I can't keep them any longer. So what do we need to drop off? This allows us to go into meditation and dormancy and begin to look at what we need to bring in, if there is a need to bring in new capabilities, a new belief, a new mindset, a new sense of identity, a closer connection to your purpose, so that when it's time for post-COVID, we are ready and raring to go. You have set everything in place as much as you can. We can't really, I mean, there's no, we're not, it's difficult to forecast, but there are some things you can forecast and there's some things you can't do. It's the ability to learn to stay like this in a place of, you know what, I may not know what's happening, but I am ready to go when the time is. The ability to hear when it's time, to know and be sensitized that this is where I should go in terms of the system I am working for. I'm hoping this is clear. I'm trying to rush it a bit, but I'm hoping that you're getting a sense of this universal cycle of change. When you have gone into meditation and dormancy, which is, I'm hoping that many of us as coaches, this is what we're doing, and that we're not doing all the knee-jerking a lot of people are doing, attending every webinar that's passing, attending to things that are not priority. It's time for us to, you know, distill and look at ourselves, our clients, stakeholders, our markets, and begin to distill. Be quiet. Now, it's easier said than done, this business of quietening. People just don't quieten for nothing. You quiet so that you can strategize. If there's noise, you will be strategizing on the wrong things. And when you're done with all of that, we go back into creation. So post-COVID is like, what are the seeds we're planning to plant? What are we strategizing? How are we looking at the system so that we are ready and prepared to run when it's time? This is our time, coaches. I know that there are a lot of clients I've had to speak to who are emotionally and mentally disturbed right now. There are a lot of people who don't know what the future holds. This is our time. Are we ready to, when it's time, to enter the system with our clients? We won't do it very well if we ourselves haven't done the necessary things to prepare ourselves for this new phase. Now I'm going to move on to ask you my final questions. I'm checking my time, 6:36. The question I ask you, each person to answer for themselves. And if you're working, if you got this and you found it easy to follow, do it with the people who are close to you so that it becomes, after a while, it becomes a pattern and you're able to ask your clients when you get to see them. What are you being called to let go of? I've asked myself that question. What are the things that I have to let go of, drop? I know the number of things I've dropped over the years. For health reasons, I know what I dropped. I remember having a tiff with Titi when she said she doesn't understand why I won't do some things. And I said, I don't have to explain to you, but I've had challenges in my life where I had to let go of certain things I'd love to do. But if I'm to stay in the system, I want to see my grandchildren, I've got to let go of those things. But people out there are not going to understand. But you understand why you have to let go of those things. What are you noticing about your inner state and to the response and the response to the current state we face? Many of us are afraid. If we're afraid, How can we help our clients? So I'm going to ask those of us who have anxiety to look for some kind of workshops that help us with state management. We know as NLPers that state is everything. If you're not in a good state, you're not going to be able to perform at your best. Athletes know this. People who do public speaking know this. People who love to attain great heights, they know this. The inner state is important. So if you're doing the knee-jerk thing and attending all types of webinars, and you do an assessment on your inner state, and you find that you're sitting in anxiety and fear and all of that stuff, then maybe you need to choose some of those webinars that take care of that. State is everything. If you're not in a great state, you can't have a great coaching session. And even if you have a so-called, there's a difference between a good coaching session and a great coaching session. There are times when we're mediocre, but sometimes we're average. What would make us have a great coaching session? So let's check and find what is our current state to this present COVID-19 issue. And many of us know this business of quiet and silence. It is in quiet and silence that we begin to see things begin to emerge. Intuition begins to work. You begin to know what it is you should do. Sometimes, if you really think about coaching, it says, don't give your coachee the answer. Help your coachee to the answer. Now, how do you do that? How are you able to allow what is in the coaching space to emerge for them? And if you haven't practiced that, if you don't know how to do it for yourself, how are you going to do it for your client? We talk about leading first. As leaders, you go first. If you can't do, how are you going to help your client? And my last question is, what could the post-COVID world look like for you? Yourself, with your strategic network, the markets, the system, and the goals and strategies you set for yourself, with regards to your system, and the goals and strategies you set for your strategic network, with regard to the system. What could the post-COVID world look like for you? What do you need to start doing? What do you need to let go of? What do you need to let go of, and what do you need to start doing? And so therefore, it's time for us to take action. The tools are simple. The wheel of life is simple. I don't use the wheel itself, but I ask questions of my client, and I use the universal cycle of change to help them understand how they stand, not where they stand, how they stand in respect to the dimension that we look for. And at this point, I'm going to end, and I look to hear, I'm hoping that was clear enough. And I would love to hear from anyone if there are questions that I hopefully can answer in the next 19 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dudun. That was really great. I have to say, we're all challenged here. Fantastic questions. Are we ready to enter the system with our clients? And what's our state of mind right now, when it comes to this COVID-19? And, Dudun has told us that we actually, and I believe strongly too, if you want to be a good coach, you also need to experience coaching as well. So we're asked to look at ourselves, and it's true, if we can't do it for ourselves, then we can't do it for our clients. So it's really time for us to now look at our goals and really look at what we need to drop off. And I like the fact that you mentioned that we should also be in a state of meditation and dormancy as well. And it's a mindset change, you know. And you've also said, yes, in that state of meditation and dormancy, we must be still and look at ourselves and look at our stakeholders and look at what's relevant and drop what is not relevant, you know. And it's like, that's the only way we can find ourselves in a state of creation where we can cope with post-COVID. And I like the way you actually applied the wheel of life, looking at the present state, the past state, and of course the future, you know. And most importantly, this universal cycle of change is fantastic. I think in your little way, you taught us a lot of NLP, and the analogy really does work. It really does align with coaching. Thank you very much for that. I think it's important, again, to put ourselves in a state of positive mindset, because we're all hearing a lot of negativity around us now. But as a coach, we also have to look at how it's affecting us as individuals so that we can be ready to enter the right space with our clients. Dudun, thank you very, very much for that. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
What you have taught us today. And I'm going to leave this us with the opportunity now to ask Dudun any questions. Yinka will moderate that. And so that we can, and once again, to Dudun has said, if we have further deeper questions, we can reach out to her for more discussions. But let me open up the floor now for anyone who has questions. Thank you, Dudun, once again for that.
Thank you. I also want you guys to remember that these are just a few models I use. And I use this as the first lens, and then I move on to other things. But I thought if I shared this with you, it's very, very, very simple, very commonsensical, and anyone could use it as the first step into to their next steps. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. P. And now is the time. If you have questions, please indicate by raising up your hand. And if you're not comfortable talking, please, you can just type in your questions in the chat segment. Questions, comments, concerns?
Dudun, I would like to ask, actually, you mentioned the fact that we should use this as a first stage. Would you recommend this as a breakthrough session or a first coaching session? And when I say breakthrough, it's like identifying whether someone is coachable or not.
Oh, well, you know, the most important thing to do is your first session where you set goals. You know, the very first session where you're doing your introductions and you are, what's the word, contracting. You will hear, you know, it's beautiful when I read the ICF core competencies and it talks about the ability to do certain things. You will hear, if you're really listening, you will know that this is what you should do in the first instance. So for instance, if people come in and they're doing leadership coaching and somebody says, I'm doing leadership coaching, they're sent by an organization. I use that model of the leadership space. I don't even waste time. It's my first thing. I just think, okay, as they're talking, because it's a stamp in my face, in my being, I just go self, others, market, goals. And as I'm listening, I'm putting things and slotting things into space. And I know where the work needs to be done. Remember, I've talked about what is the question I ask myself when I'm coaching. What is the one thing if I go for will be a catalyst, will have a ripple effect? So if I just hear leadership something, I just go bang, 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 4 of those parts. And as they're speaking, things are just slotting into places. And I know exactly what to do with the person. So it's my way of doing my analysis, if you want to put it that way. Now, as the people speak, they begin to tell you what they need. They say, I learned this in NLP, that the answer to a challenge is inside the challenge. It's not usually outside the challenge. So if you're listening, if you've got really brilliant listening skills, and that's why they talk about listening, you will hear, you will help your client, you will hear it, and you'll be able to help your client go to the space where the challenge is. It's just simple and easy. And these are the things I'm hoping that I learned. I deliberately and intentionally improved those skills. I didn't just get those skills. I decided this is what I want to improve. This is what I want to improve. And I zeroed in on them, realizing that they would be the catalyst that will propel me to my next level in coaching. So sometimes it's the initial, but there's no real, it's not I can't answer and say it is the only way. I have other things that I use as well. And it's one of the major ones I use. If it's on life, it's a life issue. And if it's a leadership coaching as well. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you very much. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much, Janet. Any other person? And please note, you can also reach her privately if you have any questions or concerns. Our details are up there on the screen, so you can copy that. Okay, I see a question. Here's a question. Okay, tips on how to keep improving one's skill. Okay, this is from Shade Odna. She's asking, what are the tips one can use to keep improving one's listening skills?
Yeah, lovely question. The first thing is to have a goal. I forgot to even mention that. Coaches, we should always have, that grow model is not a joke. We in NLP have what we call outcome thinking. I love outcome thinking. There's something we do now in our coach training where we immerse one into the other. So we do grow and outcome thinking and really make it a really powerful tool. And the first thing is to want to improve it. It's not just as simple, and this is for everything, because it's how do you keep improving one's listening skills? For any skill you want to improve, the most important thing is to not desire, but that it's a volition. There's a difference between a volition and a desire. A desire, oh, I want to improve, yeah, is different from the will. You whip up the will, and therefore you go and choose different things that allow you to improve that skill. And there's some NLP, not that I'm trying to sell an NLP training. NLP has simple tools for helping people improve the listening. But one of the most important things is this business of being quiet. You can't hear if you're not quiet on the inside. If you're noisy on the inside, if you're thinking about things you want to do and other things and second guessing your client, you're not going to hear anything. And therefore, I would ask that if it is a volition, you begin to practice it with the people around you. This is how I did mine. I learned once it's a volition, everybody's in trouble around me. I start to do things. I would say, what's the matter? What's the matter? It's because I am training myself on something. And this is how I do it without much ado. I hope that helped. That my response to your question.
Thank you very much. I hope that helped, Shade. I see a hand up, Larry Anosanya, so I'm unmuting you now. And I see a few questions on the chat segment as well. Larry.
All right, thank you, Inka. Thank you, Inka. Thank you very much, Dudun. That was really good. I would just like you to please help to further clarify in the universal cycle of change framework, the difference between the stage of turbulence and the stage of chaos, and maybe have some illustration that relates to COVID-19 or how someone can be at this time, just to further clarify that. Thank you.
Okay. The difference between turbulence and chaos. Turbulence is a little bit like there is a sensing. Something happens from outside the environment. I want to put it to you that if you really, really go back a few years, and I would like to go back as far like 1.5 years, you will sense that there's been some turbulence. Turbulence has been increasing in our system. Let me see. Things like, let me go to organizations. I remember in the last few years, when I decided to become a coach, was when in about year 2000, some HR specialists came to our office in Kofa Bayomi and said, we have a problem with training. How is it that, yes, your training is good, but how is it that when we do training, people don't change? If people change, it's 1% of the people that change. And that was what made Ms. Martins and I rush out and do coaching, because we said, oh, this is a pertinent question. This is a very important question. Let's see what other people in other countries are doing. I realized there was coaching. So coaching was a bit more intense. There was a different style. Now, when we presented this to Nigerians, they weren't interested. It has taken so many more years for people to get into emotional intelligence. It was when there was more and more and more turbulence between people in organizations slamming themselves, bosses bossing themselves, nastiness in organizations, before Nigerians woke up to emotional intelligence. It took a long time, but it's been in the system, it's been simmering. It is when there's chaos. Let me give the example of chaos. When an organization's best hands start to go, attrition, people start to go. You go, why are you going? Then you say, they find it difficult to tell you, the boss that you gave me, I can't work with him. So attrition starts. That is chaos in the system. Okay? But usually turbulence starts. It's like a simmering. And it's only people who have trained themselves to be sensitive. You know, ICF core competencies, it talks about intuition. It talks about presence. Many of us have to go and learn intuition. We say we're intuitive, but we're not really. We haven't learned how to be intuitive. And if you feel you're intuitive, make sure you have evidence that you are intuitive. So I woke up one day and I said, okay, I want to learn this intuition thing. And I started testing, getting evidence. Am I really that intuitive? And then I trained myself. So there is, when there are little signs, I want to put it to you that before the financial crisis in 2007, 2008, there was a bubble. I noticed it. I didn't know what it was. But my husband's financial, so I went to him and go, my driver's in a frenzy, my mother is in a frenzy, my sister's in a frenzy, my maid is in a frenzy. What's going on? You know what he said? He said, Dudu, you've just identified the bubble and there's a burst about to happen. And he started to take action. He said, if you, a layman, can see that, it means a burst is about to happen. So sensitivity, you will feel the turbulence. Things are not going as right as they should be. Many of us just keep going. We have stress, so we keep going. Yeah. But if we are able to take stock and we have that habit of taking stock from time to time, we will be sensitized to the turbulence in our system. I've used other examples. I haven't used COVID, but I want to put it to you that some of us were waiting for a biological warfare, or we were sensitized to that can happen. Yeah. Look at the warnings from Bill Gates. We don't know whether he was sensitized to a biological warfare, because all those countries fighting, you could sense something's gonna happen. That's turbulence, that's sensitized to it, and then you start to take action. But none of us took action. None of the countries took action. I don't know if that has given you a sort of explanation on turbulence.
Thank you so much. Yes, it has. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we have 3 more questions and we'll wrap up for the day. And this question is from Sonny Enebi. How do you creatively engage your clients or prospects on their preparedness after COVID-19?
How do you creatively do this and actively?
Engage them. Yes.
engage them. You know, there was something Stephen Covey said. He says, emotional bank account. If we're not careful, many of us will be calling clients we haven't called. We haven't had the habit of calling. And therefore, it doesn't look so good. And the client is thinking, come on. Now, some of us have habits where I have a client and I constantly keep them in check. How are you doing? The stuff we did and all of that stuff. Now, it's easier to work with those clients for me to make a call now. And I can say, you know what? How are you? Now, those I haven't done that with. I'm not going to call them now. It's just a little bit odd. It's like, okay, you want looking for money now. You didn't call me all the while. But now I can call some of them and I'm going, okay, how are you looking at the leadership space? I would ask pertinent questions on those things. I would ask about them. I would ask about their stakeholders. I would ask about the market, and I would ask about their strategies. And there are ways of asking these questions. The growth questions are good, but I would make them my own. And I would just select a few questions to ask my clients, which I have done. I've actually helped a client who thought she was going to lose out, who brought in machinery in manufacturing. And we have finally designed something that can go out to stakeholders so that she can participate. We're one of the participants in helping in this COVID period. So yeah, these are the ways. Think of the clients you have, look at their space, the market they serve, and see which one could this is just second positioning them. Which of them will need you right now? And determine whether your relationship with them is good enough for you to even begin to have those discussions. I'll be cautious if you haven't got a good relationship with them. Okay.
Thank you very much for that. I hope that helped, Sunny. Two more questions, and the one of them is from Barbara, and it says, as coaches that need to help others, what is the greatest thing we can do to be prepared for our clients now?
As coaches
that need to help others, what is the greatest thing we can do to be prepared for our clients now?
State. I would work on my state. I would work in that area of intuition, all of those things that seem a bit airy-fairy. If I'm anxious, I can't work with the client. If I'm anxious in my space, they will pick it up. And therefore, each person should do an assessment. I would use the so-called wheel of life, create my own, look for what is pertinent in my space. Look, we all have on the inside, we know what we're not great at. We don't need anyone to tell us. If we go inside, you will know what you're not great at. That is what I would tune up. That is what I will upskill. I know that many webinars are coming up, but there are some things you need to move up to a higher level. Some of the things that are airy-fairy, intuition, how do you work with instinct? How do you empathize? How do you work with your beliefs and the values? I would polish that. I would work on my purpose so that when I'm moving and I'm speaking from purpose. My client doesn't even have to ask me questions. He knows I'm aligned with my purpose from how I speak, my values from how I speak to him, the things I'm saying. So if you're not solid in that area, that's the area I would look for congruence within myself. I will work on me and I would tune that up, and purpose, my vision, my mission, my capabilities, all of that stuff, I will align and so that I know I will allow me to face anything any client can bring. Because once you're steady on that and you're congruent and you work with intuition, you will know. You don't need so much. You don't need to keep looking. Things come to you. That's the place you have to get to. Those are the skills I think we need to hone as coaches. And I didn't just get them. And I worked on it. I was deliberate and intentional. And I realized if I get this, many other things will work out. I don't need to know my client's business, but I have to have an understanding of market and space. Yeah, his market, my market, his market. So little things like that. You will know what to tune up. Use that leadership space to find what it is you need to tune up.
All right, thank you very much, Barbara. I hope that helps. And our final question for the day is from our president, Adara. Please, do you mind sharing some of the approaches you used when you identified things you were called to let go of?
You know, they say sometimes, I don't know, I am one person who thanks the Lord when I have a challenge. First, I go, Lord, why me? Why me? But I recognize that in every challenge, there's something I have to let go of. Many people have easy lives, so they don't necessarily identify this is what's causing my stress. I have not been so blessed. So I get a lot of issues and challenges, and I have done so for many years. And it has allowed me to drop many things. People go, why are you like this? Why are you like this? I've dropped them. It takes them going through some kind of major problem before they get that. But I've had health issues. I've had all types of things. And I know as I begin to look, I begin to identify, I'm stretched because I'm trying to manage this friendship. I think people need this from me and I keep doing it, but it's stretching me. You know, you have to start to understand yourself. You feel things in your body. Sensitize yourself to you and how you work. I know stretch when my chest begins to stretch here. I don't have to wait small. When this begins to pull, I go, okay, what's going on here? I got to drop this. What do I have to drop? This is the thing that's killing me. And you ask yourself those questions. If you don't spend time checking yourself and knowing yourself, you can't know. That's why some of us coaches get some time, because we help them find this. What I do with my clients is I make them really understand themselves, how it works in their bodies as symptoms. Symptoms are not just symptoms, you know. Maybe some of us need to go and polish up that area. Person has a pain in a particular part of the body. It's coming from somewhere. There's a stretch somewhere. And sometimes if you help your client align, he will say, oh yeah, this is because I feel stretched here because. So I was able to find my stretch and the things that really got me. And I was able to say, look, I don't enjoy doing these things. I have to do them because custom says this. This one, I have a choice. I can dump. All that will happen is people will not like me. All that will happen is this. Can I live with that? Yes. And I move on. And I put it into action and turn it into how I live. So everybody has to find their own way and customize it for themselves. But it has to be more than a desire. There's a volition to move to the next level. And things emerge. You will just know. You will just know. I don't know if that helps you, but I can help anyone who wants to get to that because I've had to spend some time really, really polishing my own up because of challenges along the way. I'm not so blessed that I just suddenly know them. Things happen and I have to learn how to do certain things in particular ways. So anyone can, please feel free to call me and I will help.
Okay, thank you very much. And that's the final question for the day. And if we have any further questions, comments, or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact Mrs. Peterside directly. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Janet. Any last words?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Yinka. Thank you for that moderation. Dudun, thank you once again for all your insights. Very, very insightful indeed. Really did enjoy that. I want to just remind everybody once again to be on the lookout for details concerning Series 4, which will be next Monday at the same time, 6 p.m. So please be on the lookout on the platform. And we look forward to seeing you there again. So once again, be safe, stay safe, and keep safe. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
All right.
Dudun.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. She did much better than I.
Thank you. Bye.